Hello to everyone, and thank you, Regina, thank you, Wojtek, for asking me to say something about Trieste Mental Health Organization, also because this allowed me to think a bit more about the connection between Trieste system and open dialogue, because are about 5 years that we are starting to implement open dialogue in our services. First of all, I would like to say that I'm very curious and interested about this Polish psychiatric reform. I like very much your way to function in this process because, as I heard from Regina and from you, you are putting all together some inspiration from different kind of good practices. And personally, I think that especially in this time is the only way to really innovate and change the situation, because there are around spread in the world many different good inspiration about good practices, and it's very important to put these practices together and support each other, as Werner said before, to listen and learn from neighbors. I think is a very good way to express the idea of network and create a strong network.
I'm sorry.
Yes, he's on the desk.
Ah, the
he's
desk.
already
Yeah,
yes,
here.
he's already
Oh,
done.
sorry, I was looking at my presentation. Is it
No,
you?
no, 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 no.
No?
It's better you. Sorry, because
where
I
is
changed.
our
Just
helper?
here. Just if you go on the desk.
No. On the desk, but where? On the desk?
If you close all, maybe we can
Yeah.
find.
Okay. Close all. How to do it? I don't know. But where is it on the desk? You put it here?
Yes,
No.
was the guy
Ah.
doing already.
Panie Damianie, gdzie pan jest?
Yes, it's just.
Yeah.
You have to go on the desktop?
Yeah, okay, maybe I start to say something. The first was a picture about Trieste, they will find out. Trieste is a quite small city, 240,000 inhabitants. And is located in the northeast of Italy. Next one, please. Okay, I can. Maybe I.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping me. Sorry, I'm too short to stand behind this tower.
Would you like
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine.
You can
It's
change
fine.
like that.
It's fine. I can manage. Thank you. So this is Trieste, as you saw, and is in the northeast of Italy. In Trieste there is a quite interesting mixed culture because it's on the border. And in Trieste, in the beginning of 70s, started the Italian psychiatric reform that produced in the 1978 a law 180-108 that is known as the law that closed the psychiatric hospital. All the process was led by Franco Basaglia. But it's not only the law that closed the psychiatric hospital, that is quite an important issue. I think Italy, for sure, is at the moment the only country where this kind of reform, psychiatric reform, ended with the total closure in all the nation of the psychiatric hospital. But it's, for me, even more important, the law that had and still has the goal to change the mentality, the opinion, the public opinion into the community about the idea of mental health in illness, because all start from changing this opinion into the community. And the idea of Basaglia was to avoid to create isolated places different places for people with mental health issue, but to put all of them together, all of us, into the community. And in fact, this law was at the time included into the national health reform and health law. And in Trieste, actually, the mental health center are totally connected with the health system. So it's a kind of development of the health system and not only of the psychiatric system. Just a few words about the cultural background. Those years, second part of 60s, beginning of 70s, were everywhere, especially in the Western world, special years for democratic reforms, and especially in the psychiatric field. I cannot mention all, but in UK, the therapeutic community and the sector psychiatric reform in France, in Finland, Alanen started with a psychotherapeutic approach into the psychiatric hospital, public psychiatric hospital, to change and to reduce beds, and many other places started with this kind of psychiatric reform. In Trieste, Basaglia started with the therapeutic community, but then he understood that the system to really change, needed to go a bit forward in a quite more radical way, according with his idea that no physical or psychological therapy can help people who are oppressed and held captive. And so the idea was to close up totally the psychiatric hospital, considered as real condition, but also symbolic condition of keeping oppressed people with mental health issue. Freedom is therapeutic is a phrase, a motto that is written on the wall. One of the wall is still there, one of the wall of the old psychiatric hospital that now is a beautiful park full of roses, more than 5,000 different quality of roses. And from this started all the process that gets to change, to create a paradigm shift in psychiatry, moving from the illness to the person, the whole person, to the clinical model, to the community-based approach model, where the attention to improve and develop and respect the human rights, civil rights, and mostly of the social rights of the person, was the main point, the main focus. Also was big focus on the idea to break the strong connection that always was in many places, still is, even in Italy, the connection between health system and juridical justice system, judicial system. And so people are obliged to be cured because are dangerous. But the idea is that people, if needs, are obliged to be cured because it's their right to be cured and not because are dangerous for the society. And to underline this point, I think is very important to change, to shift the paradigm about mental health issue. The focus so is on create and develop full citizenship about human rights and to support people in finding real opportunity in the real world to live a normal, real life. I'm talking also about a nation where the welfare is not so rich as in some Northern Europe country, where especially people with mental health issue has no job, even if clinically are not so bad, because there are so many people without job, no money, no house. So our intention is also to support people in this issue about welfare. Actually, the services are 4 mental health centers, 24 hours, open 7 days for a week. Each mental health center has 6 beds, so it means that all the needs mental health support come from the mental health center for all the catchment area, that is 6,000 inhabitants for each mental health center. Each mental health center is connected with the primary care health district, so we work constantly together to create a community-based health support. Then there is one small unit for the town, for the city, with 6 beds in the general hospital, just for very acute situation happening maybe in the night, but normally people stay there just one night, one day, only very exceptional situation, need to stay a bit more inside because has also some medical, physical issue. There is a unit, kind of rehabilitation unit, but is much more for improve the supporting housing and to develop working inclusion and social inclusion through different location of day center or workshop center that are around. We work very close with social cooperatives that are special enterprises starting in Trieste many years ago, now developed in all the nation, that are quite common enterprise that develop employers work to employ people, but have the issue to employ 30% of people coming from the disadvantaged area and are our best partner. And since 3-4 years, we have these REMS we call is a kind of protected shelter, but is open, where that substitutes the forensic hospital. There are a couple of topics very strong. One is no restraint. Now this no restraint is not only in Trieste, but in all the region. And in the beginning, since a long time, was just a kind of declaration, I mean intention, personal intention of the workers of the working group. Now, since 2016, is a regional resolution. It means that is a law, and restraint is considered not therapeutic for people. So you go against the law if you restrain. From 2015, this is a national law. In all Italy, we have this law that closed the forensic hospital. And so concluded the process started in the beginning of 17, closing all the psychiatric hospital. This process is not very simple because in Trieste we have just a small kind of open apartment with 2 beds, and in the region we have just 10 beds dislocated, but in the rest of Italy, in many places is like this, in many other places is quite very different, and there are still big institutions that replaced this forensic hospital. Also the law, the 180, is not actuated in all the nation in the same way. So in our region is there are quite good services and system everywhere, and in many other regions in Italy, but in many places in Italy, the situation is still very, very bad. I have Lupo in front of me, maybe he could say something. And this, for me, is the expression how it's important that team, very cohesive and with good intention, collaborating with politicians and administrators need to come together to really change the system. Maybe it's not enough just a law. Our services, the treatment is based on one side on clinical treatment and give support in a clinical way. On the other side, big effort is placed on create many opportunities into the community in terms of housing, in terms of work, in terms of social relation, because mostly of the time could happen that a person with mental health issue maybe is much better after the therapy, the treatment in a clinical way, but then remain totally isolated and with just short opportunity and resources, and stay dependent from the family or dependent from the mental health center. So we put really big effort on this part of the job. Is a really important part of the work of the professional to open into the community and create many opportunities, activate all the resources that are inside the community to create this kind of work inclusion and social inclusion opportunity. The collaboration, the partnership, the co-production with all the agencies that are into the community, like as user association, family association, but also citizen and social cooperative, all the kind of resources that always are around the person, not only the family, of course, first the family, but all the other kind of resources. This comes also from the idea that our service doesn't have enough resources in terms of professionals and in terms of economy to just respond to the needs. So part of the job is to activate the resource into the community, following the idea that is the city that cares. So part of the job is to promote social inclusion, developing solidarity, activating events and occasion to build, improve good relationship between neighbors. You have here some picture of some assembly that we used to do in many situations to motivate the quarter, for example, to accept people moving in some houses of or whatever, and to change the stigma, to change, to communicate all together, to try to change the cultural situation around. Okay, Trieste is a WHO collaborating center, so we have many connections with different kinds of reality and good practice around in the world. And at the end of September, 23-27, will be a big international meeting that's in collaboration with WHO. The focus is to connect good practices that are around the world. All of you are, of course, invited. As I said, about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we started our training, a small group of professionals, about open dialogue, coming from the idea that needs of people change as our needs change each year, each month, and so also services need to change, to innovate, constantly innovate. And so at the moment we are trying to develop something about open dialogue included into our system. And what is nice is this small group of professionals trained the intensive home care team is a small team that give plus support at home to avoid that people in crisis go to the mental health center. I forget to say, I have many data, but I prefer not to show the data, but just I want to say that more than 60% of the intervention happen in the house or in other places and not in the mental health center. And last year we had 18 obligatory treatment for all the city. All services are open door, and as I said, no restraint. But to really implement open dialogue is not a simple process. Many of the professionals say, but we already do what open dialogue says. I can say that almost 5 of the 7 principles are in the organization truly respected, but about the psychotherapeutic approach, I think that the dialogical approach is very, very, very important, very useful, and could be very useful for our organization. So small research that we did last year through 17 interviews to professional and users and family members about what is hindering, what is helping this development of open dialogue in our system. And what was the finding show that what is hindering is a lack of time and space. Time is something very precious, and the idea is that for open dialogue session, we need a lot of time in the beginning. And it's true, but we then don't lose time in the process. And actually, I'm afraid it's growing the idea that being rushed is something similar to be efficient. But it's not, it's just being in rush. So to just calm down a bit and stay with the person a bit more maybe could be very helpful. And also what is hindering is a lack of legitimation coming from the top leadership. So what could be really helping is to create a culture, open dialogue culture of the whole service, not just training 10 people, but try to train the whole service, because when are just a few people trained in the service, maybe spread in different services, these people can feel really embarrassed and in difficulties to move on. But the research also some very nice surprises. Peer workers and family members and new professionals are really very, very keen, interested to open dialogue. And now more peer workers ask to improve their training. I think that peer workers are really, really the future, how to say, about innovation. As Magnus also said, we need to take care a lot about their suggestions. I can say much more, but just to give some impression, here you have just 2 links. One to find some more information about Trieste Mental Health Department, and the second one, some information about this meeting that is going to happen in September. I want to conclude with some general issue. Well, in the world there are, as I started, many and different islands, I can say, of very good practice, very inspiring practice. At the moment I'm collaborating with India, and I'm really inspired by what I'm seeing there. But this happened in a big system, psychiatric system in the world that is not quite well. There are so many contradictions around, and the biomedical model is always too strong everywhere, and the focus on diagnosis and all the procedures that the diagnosis asks is still very strong, and this risk to reduce, even cancel the importance of the relationship between professionals and patients. Also everywhere, still we have a prevalent hospital paradigm and institution-based services. As Prawa say, there is this process of trans and re-institutionalization as a new institutional landscape, and shelter, protective shelter for users, people with mental health issue, are improving. And is also improving the number of people with mental health issue into the prison. This is a very, very strong issue. Now we are collaborating with Los Angeles, and they ask some help because they have a so big number of people with mental health illness into the prison. And so need some help altogether to find a kind of response to this problem. On my point of view, there is also another important issue, that is the motivation of professionals. Because of the hierarchy that is maybe growing, because of the bureaucracy, professionals are, maybe just because the age that is growing of professionals and no change, but the motivation is a big issue that needs to be faced. The Mental Health Atlas, the last one, 2017, that is the biggest WHO collection of data about lack of resource, the resource that we really need, and that the resource that we really have. And the comparison between says, underline, that still in the world there are still not enough resources invested in mental health psychiatric field. And mostly of these resources are still invested in psychiatric hospital. In some places, in some countries, even 80% of the resources are still invested into psychiatric hospital. It means in beds. So the number of the beds, even if are reducing, this is the trend, but are still too many, and the beds is the most expensive treatment into the system. Regina this morning mentioned the personal budget that we used in Trieste, that was very, very useful to move economical resources from the structure to the person, from the bed mostly, to the person, around the person. And this allows us, for example, in the last decade, to close all the protected shelter, transforming in a personal budget that supports the person in their own house. And is a kind of deinstitutionalization of the shelter. This community-based culture needs to be accelerated and improved still. according with this mental atlas. So I want to conclude with a thought. In this situation, general, I mean, situation, I wonder if being as professionals, doing good and honest clinical job is still enough for us. Or maybe we need still to put a bit more attention and effort on the system, on the general political situation into the institution, with the goal to change the institution and to change the system. I think that open dialogue proposes a very useful, important, democratic culture that reduces the gap between professionals and family and users, so could be very, very useful to improve human rights, and is close and keen to human rights. Maybe, it's just an opinion, it's worth to make this connection a bit more clear and explicit. As the same that in Trieste, where we need a better psychotherapeutic to improve the quality of our psychotherapeutic approach. So I think I'm concluding exactly as I started, underlining the importance of talking with the neighbors and to share what is the best in our practice, and to try to create strong connection and strong network, because we need this. We need this to improve our services and to feel not isolated. Thank you for your listening.